February 2017, concrete slabs in the spillway at Oroville Dam failed during releases from the floodgates, starting a chain of events that prompted the evacuation of nearly 200,000 people downstream. The dam didn't fail, but it came too close for comfort, especially for the tallest structure of its kind in the United States.
Now the integrity of a major dam in California comes under threat after days of historic rainfall in the region.
Home to the nation's tallest dam, water levels finally receded, which stopped the overflow of water from the dam's emergency spillway.
When America's tallest dam nearly collapsed in February 2017, the image of torrents of water tearing through the broken spillway at Oroville Dam became a symbol of the risks hidden within the country's aging infrastructure. That crisis forced 188,000 people downstream to evacuate in panic, while engineers scrambled to stabilize a structure that had long been trusted, but never truly tested by extreme weather. Billions of gallons of water thundered down the Feather River, carrying concrete, sediment, and the illusions of safety with it. The emergency made headlines, but now, experts are warning that the nightmare of Oroville may not be in the past.
To hold all the water that could ever flow into the reservoir at once, and yet, having water overtop an unprotected embankment will almost certainly cause a breach.
It may well repeat itself, and soon. Some believe 2025 could bring another Oroville failure if urgent action isn't taken. The story of Oroville is, at its core, the story of America's aging dams. More than 70% of the nation's 90,000 dams are over 50 years old, designed for climates and flood models that no longer exist. When Oroville was completed in 1968, it represented the pinnacle of engineering achievement. 770 feet tall, holding back more than 3.5 million acre-feet of water, generating hydropower for millions of Californians. But like many mid-20th century megaprojects, it was built under assumptions that ignored modern risks.
When that water started eroding the earthen embankment, officials feared the wall would collapse altogether. And so on Sunday, authorities ordered the evacuation of nearly 200,000 people living below the lake.
Larger storms fueled by climate change, seismic threats, and the long-term wear of materials exposed to relentless pressure. By the time the rains of 2017 overwhelmed its main and emergency spillways, flaws that had been quietly present for decades revealed themselves in spectacular fashion. Concrete cracked and peeled away from weakened bedrock. The emergency spillway, never tested, unleashed a torrent that carved deep gullies into the hillside. Had the erosion continued, it could have sent a 30-foot wall of water downstream, obliterating towns. California's Department of Water Resources, DWR, moved quickly in the aftermath, rebuilding the main spillway and reinforcing the emergency one with concrete. More than $1 billion was spent on repairs. Officials now claim the dam is stronger than ever, yet beneath the polished surface, many engineers remain uneasy. Independent forensic teams concluded that the original failure was not the result of one bad decision or freak storm, but of a long-term systemic failure to recognize design weaknesses and maintain the structure properly. That systemic failure is still haunting Oroville and thousands of other dams across the United States. As one dam safety official put it, the problem isn't that Oroville was a fluke. The problem is that Oroville is a preview.
What is it with regards to the engineering that went wrong here?
Well, so we have a couple of things. You have to remember that California reservoirs are under tension all the time. We use them to store water, and of course we're just coming out of a record drought. We store water, but we also use them to regulate floods. So you have to set aside some space behind the reservoir. And in this case, there's not much space set behind this reservoir to catch floods. So it filled, and it filled pretty quickly. And then we had to run water down a spillway, and we were forced to allow water to go over an emergency spillway, which had never been tested since the Oroville was built in 1968.
Climate change is the accelerant. California has already seen back-to-back extremes. Years of punishing drought, followed by atmospheric rivers that dump record-breaking rainfall in just days. Dams by design are supposed to manage these swings, holding back water in floods and storing it for dry months. But most were built with outdated hydrological assumptions. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers still uses regulation manuals written in the 1970s based on rainfall records that ignored later megastorms in 1986 and 1997. That means many dams, including Oroville, cannot safely accommodate a probable maximum flood, the worst-case deluge that climate scientists now believe is more likely than ever. In short, Oroville was rebuilt, but not for the climate of 2025. Downstream communities live with this anxiety daily. For residents of Oroville, Gridley, Yuba City, and beyond, the memory of the 2017 evacuation lingers. Families rushed into gridlocked traffic, fearing they might be swept away. At Beale Air Force Base, evacuees filled gymnasiums, wondering if their homes would exist when they returned. The crisis cost more than money. It eroded trust. People want to know if their dam is truly safe, and while officials assure them it is, the cracks of doubt remain, as real as the cracks once hidden in the spillway. The environmental toll has been just as severe. Oroville was already a barrier to salmon and steelhead, blocking access to ancestral spawning grounds. After the spillway collapsed, sediment choked miles of habitat, suffocating fish populations already stressed by warm water and drought. Billions of dollars spent on hatcheries and restoration were undermined in days. For ecosystems downstream, another failure would not just be catastrophic, it could be permanent. Experts argue that the issue extends far beyond one dam. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave U.S. dams a collective grade of D on its 2017 infrastructure report card.
And things didn't go well when the water went over the spillway. So we ended up with basically what you can consider the fog of war in a flood event. You never quite know what's going to happen. And water has a way of testing all the shortcomings of your design and your actions, and it did so in Oroville.
So as we reported, there's a hole that was carved out of the main spillway, and concrete was basically ripped apart by the volume of water. How are they addressing that issue now?
High-hazard dams, those whose failure would likely cost human lives, number more than 15,000. Oroville is only the most visible member of a much larger, riskier club, with dam safety departments chronically underfunded and understaffed. Inspections are too infrequent and too superficial. In some cases, inspectors don't even enter spillways, relying on visual surveys from a distance. The 2016 Oroville inspection, for instance, missed the hairline cracks that later grew into gaping craters. Solutions exist, but they require political will and investment. Some states are now demanding private dam owners pay for independent engineering inspections, relieving pressure on public agencies. Others, like American Rivers, push for dam removal when a structure's risks outweigh its benefits. In the case of Oroville, removal is impossible. California relies too heavily on its reservoir, but updating its safety standards to reflect modern climate science is not optional. Engineers have already warned that even with its rebuilt spillways, Oroville cannot yet handle the flood of record. That is why some are sounding the alarm now, predicting that another wet winter or sequence of atmospheric rivers could push Oroville back to the brink in 2025. The 2017 near collapse should have been a once-in-a-lifetime wake-up call, but with infrastructure aging and weather growing fiercer, experts fear it was just the beginning. We got lucky. One forensic report bluntly stated, the people of Northern California may not be so lucky next time. The Feather River, after all, has no memory. It only knows gravity, and when water rises faster than concrete can hold, it will once again surge toward the towns below, indifferent to whether the warnings were heeded. The question is not whether Oroville can fail again, it's whether we will act before it does. For now, the clock is ticking toward 2025, and the warnings are loud and clear.